Hi everyone, and welcome to the Effective Teaching Podcast. I'm Dan Jackson, and today I'm going to tell you why I keep a class profile with detailed notes on my students. One of my old schools that I used to work at actually had a policy in place that said that we had to have a class profile for our students. But the problem was I never actually told us how to do it well or why I needed to do it in the first place. They just told me that I had to be with my programs, and that was it. But I then went to a literacy workshop that was run by a lovely lady called Nadine Kennedy. She showed me how to make a really useful class profile that was based on the NAPLAN scores. And so you would enter each of these NAPLAN scores, you would have conditional formatting so that if the students got greater than 85%, they were green. If they got less than 50%, they were red. And we used that so that I could have a very simple glance at how my students were going. And then she gave me a whole bunch of strategies to use to help me with those students who needed help or to advance those who were already excelling. So that's the basic idea of this. And so I had these scores of the reading, of their writing, of their numeracy, of their spelling and grammar. And I would use that, right? The color coding really made it easy for me to then differentiate what was going on in my classroom. And this made a whole lot of sense to me. And it was so useful as I read about teaching my classes. I was constantly referring to my profile, looking basically just to kind of remember, to refresh my memory on what I could do to really help each student. And it would tell me, I would look down at my profile and be like, oh, look, that kid's read and we're about to do a whole bunch of reading and he struggles to work out the main idea from a text. And so I could put in strategies to really help that student. And I could see each of my students who were going to have an issue with that. And so I could put in place systems to help and differentiate what was going on in my classroom. I discovered that I had students who struggled specifically with comprehension. And so I would find strategies that I could use to help them work out those main ideas that were in their programs. So this came through explicit instruction, but was also done through modeling. So I would go through and highlight stuff for them and show them how to follow key terms or key ideas that repeat themselves in passages. And then I would get them to practice it in pairs or groups and then do it by themselves. And it was really good because it was specific for their needs. It wasn't something that I told the whole class to do, but it was something that I really worked on with those few students who needed it and who were struggling. It also helped me to identify the students who struggled to write good essays, telling me exactly where they were struggling. And I could then customize the scaffolds for them. I could help them with their specific issues, and everything that was going on for them, I could then cater what I was doing in my classroom. That whole differentiation, it suddenly made sense to me. I could explicitly teach things to my students. If they struggled to write an essay that was persuasive, I could teach them about modality, what it was, and how to actually adjust it in an essay to persuade the reader towards the perspective that they were trying to get the reader to agree with, or to help them learn how to structure paragraphs so they knew how to start it, how to finish it, and when they needed to switch over to a new one with a change of topic, or if it's creative writing and a changing of who was speaking or a change of topic. This became so clear to me, right? This whole use of a class profile, suddenly what I thought was a useless thing that my school was just making me do as paperwork suddenly made sense. But it only made sense when it was done well, right? It didn't make sense to me before because it was just, you have to have notes on your kids. I was like, well, sure, I'll have some notes on my kids, but what's the point of that? And I was never really given any direction. And that was early on in my teaching. Since then, obviously, my class profile has gotten better and better, and now it's really clear. I use them all the time. I start my year off every year to creating my class profile when I've got my class. When they come in, I'm finding out, I'm surveying them, I'm getting them to make little videos about themselves, what their goals are for life, anything about their background that might help me, getting to know them really well. And then I follow them. I make sure I'm getting close to them as they're learning and watching what they're doing. And then I'll take notes and add that to my class profile. Whenever they do, like if I do any kind of quiz or I do some kind of check in my classroom about their learning, formative assessments, or even just any kind of evidence of learning, I can then talk to them, adjust my notes, and that helps me then in the future to make sure that I know exactly where they're at and what they need to do next to get to where I want to take them. So this profile gave me a place to go to get a quick glimpse of my students, and it told me where they excelled and where they really needed that help. It did this really quickly too. Because it was color coded, it allowed me to really just take a glance, and it only took me maybe 3 or 4 minutes at the beginning when I was thinking about my lessons. I would have a quick look and I'd go, all right, I need to add this activity or this one in there to help those students. And so I would differentiate based on the actual notes and the research that I had on my students. And so even if my notes, I would bold things in my notes. So I didn't have to read everything. It was just there available nice and quick so that I could look at it, understand my students, not forget them, right? Because we tend to forget, not because we're not interested, right? It's because we just have so many kids, right? I'm generally a PDH teacher. I even taught the Bible for quite a while in schools, and I would have 14 classes of 30 kids, and to keep up with all those names, it took ages at the beginning of the year to learn those students' names. And then to get to know them beyond that is even harder. So this really helped me to know exactly who was in my class. As I prepped the lesson, as I went into the lesson, I had it with me all the time. Even as I was teaching the class, I had the class profile at the front of the room in a closed folder. So, I wasn't making it open and available for my students, but if I needed to quickly have a glance at it to just work out whether or not a student's question actually related to something previously that I already knew, I could do that. And I go, all right, that student really struggles to read, and that's why he's having all these questions. That's why he's not focused at the moment when I've just asked them to read a passage by themselves, because he actually can't do it. And so I'm going to go and help him and not get annoyed at the fact that he's getting distracted. So the why for my class profile is twofold for me. It gives me specific information on each of my students that I use to differentiate. That's number one. Number two, it helps me to remember those things, that information about my students for each of my students, especially when I was teaching so many classes, right? I had so many, and it was just such a wonderful tool to be able to glance down and know my students as I entered that classroom. And it actually helped me to learn their names faster. It helped me to really get to know them and have positive relationships with them, because they knew that I was getting to know them as well. And they could see that in the way that I interacted with them and the questions that I had, because I knew what they were interested in from the earlier videos or from the surveys that they'd completed. And so I actually had this great insight into my students that a lot of other teachers didn't necessarily. And I would often, when I made my class profile, I would then share that class profile with any other teacher who was teaching that class to help them as well. So you see, when you have lots of students, or if you're overworked or anything like that, that's why it's key to write it down and to have it in one place. It really helps you. I remember once I was giving an exam and I totally forgot that there was a student in my class who needed green colored paper. Right? He had a vision issue, and having green paper fixed that issue for him. And so I'd forgotten that. And here I was handing out exams, and he was like, where's mine, sir? I can't use this one. It needs to be on green paper. I'm like, oh, you're right. Totally forgot. But when I started putting it into my class profile, I never forgot again, because I would just look before I was prepping exams, before I handed them out, before I sent them to the printer. I would quickly look, does anyone need anything special? Right? And then I would have that done for them. So this is obviously then affected his result, and then affected what I did in the future as well, because I didn't want to have that happen again. Right? So keeping a class profile means I could quickly glimpse at it and know what was needed. Key things were always color coded. There was bold so that I wouldn't miss anything. It was really important to me that I knew my students and what they were doing, where they were at, and how I could help them to get to where I was trying to get them to go, or where they wanted to go even. And then this massively improved my teaching and my students' learning, because I knew where they were and where we were heading. I now include a whole lot of information in my class profiles, right? So now I've got NAPLAN results, I have their general interests, I have results from formative assessments or diagnostic assessments, stuff from the learning support team, and other information that I get maybe from my wellbeing team as well, or it could be their roll call teacher, anything, right? I will gather that information and stick it into my class profile so that I can quickly learn more about my students. And it all goes into that one place so that I get to know my students in great depth and can then adjust my teaching based on that information, and it's not taking me lots of time each time, and I'm not forgetting kids at all either. by constantly referring to it before each lesson, I am a better teacher and they are better equipped to become successful lifelong learners. And so I really want to encourage you, if you don't have a class profile, go and make one, right? In fact, you can come to my site, go to teacherspd.net/45. You'll land on this episode, all the show notes will be there, and I have a template there that you can use, right? Take it and go through it and adjust it however you like, okay? But I want you to get it so you can use it and create a really nice profile about your class, have a look at their NAPLAN results, and actually work out that the NAPLAN results are helpful, right? It's not about rating our school against a school down the road, which is what so many principals do to us. They go, oh, look, we did really well in our NAPLAN results. This across the board, we're better than the school down the road, or we're not as good as the school down the road, so we're going to do this. But we need to know how each student in our class is going so that we can adapt things and help them differentiate and provide them with learning that excels them and enables them to be able to learn when otherwise things would be really hard. So create a class profile, but once you created it, you have a fantastic resource that you need to constantly refer to. Don't just make it and leave it in your staff room. It needs to travel around with you. Put it on the front of your programs. Put it in your day book. Put it in your diary, right? Whatever you go around the school with, even if it's your laptop, put it in your laptop. Have a spreadsheet that has each of your classes in it and just have a quick look at them so that you can easily have a look at how your students are going and take those notes. Now, some fair warning, my template's larger than normal. And if you like, have a look at what's in there and then shrink it down into something that's kind of more one page for you, for your general looking through regularly all the time. So grab that. And honestly, the more you can collect, the better able you are to adapt your teaching to target them specifically and help them. It's a lot like marketing, you know that? So when you market to people, one of the things you really want to do as a marketer is to get to know what they call your ideal customer avatar. You want to get to know the people that you are trying to serve in your business. And then as you get to know them, you then adjust your marketing according to who they are. And lots of things will allow you to target specific people with specific backgrounds in Facebook or social media or Google. Your advertising actually matches up with their interests. And so you can customize what you're doing for the people you're trying to reach to try and persuade them to do something for you, which is kind of like what we're doing in our classrooms. I guarantee you, the more you get to know your students, the more engaged they'll get in their learning, because you will start to do things that are specifically for those people to help those students really succeed in your class, because that's what you want. And I know that's what you want. You're a teacher. Teachers always want their students to succeed. So once you've done this, make sure you refer to it, adjust it, make sure you come back to it, stick it somewhere where you're going to see it, and then come back, go to teacherspd.net/45, leave me a comment. I want to know how you went, what you did, maybe share your template, take a photo of it or something and share it that way, or share a link to it. It would be fantastic to see how you're going. So thanks so much for taking some time to listen to me today. Head on over to teacherspd/45, leave me a comment, let me know how you go with your class profile. And remember, this is where you can go and grab my template as well if you have never had a class profile before. Finally, if you haven't yet, I would really love it. It would mean the world to me if you could leave a review, and make sure that you subscribe to ensure that you are notified about each episode as it is released. Catch you next week.